Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at SEO. Specifically, we're going to be looking at crawl budget. And we're going to be basing this on a Search Engine Land article from December 2024. So let's just jump right into it. So you might be thinking, crawl budget, right? What is that?
No.
Why should I care? Well, it's basically how much time Googlebot spends crawling your website. And you should care because it affects whether Google even knows that your pages exist. And if it does know that they exist, how high they rank in search. And what's really interesting is that this article kind of points out that most websites don't really need to worry too much about crawl budget, but there's still some really good stuff in here. So
Yeah, it might not be the sexiest topic, but it's definitely useful to understand. It's kind of like knowing how the engine of your car works. You know, you don't have to be a mechanic, but it's still good to have that basic understanding of how things work.
okay, so let's get into it. Why does crawl budget even exist? Is Googlebot just like stingy with its time or what?
Well, not really. It's more about Googlebot being a good internet citizen. Imagine thousands of concert ticket buyers all trying to hit the same website at the same time. You know that server's going to crash, right? Google doesn't want to be that guy. They call this the cost of crawling. So they're mindful of the resources they're using on their end and also the impact they're having on the websites that they crawl.
So it's kind of like they have a certain amount of attention that they can give to each site, right?
Yeah, they call it a crawl capacity limit. And basically they determine that by how much traffic a site can handle without things slowing down too much. And if things are running smoothly, they'll speed up the crawling. But if they start seeing that things are getting bogged down, they're going to back off a bit. It's a balancing act.
Okay, so what kind of sites do they say should really be paying attention to this?
Well, Google specifically mentions three. Very large websites with millions of pages, then sites that are constantly being updated with fresh content, and sites with a lot of pages that Google has discovered but not indexed.
Okay, so you're thinking, oh, well, my site's not that big. I don't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a catch.
Yeah. Something as common as faceted navigation. You see it on e-commerce sites all the time. Can create way more URLs than you realize.
Right. Like when you go to a website and you start filtering by size or color or price, that creates a whole new URL, right?
Exactly. And all those different combinations mean that a simple product category can explode into thousands of variations. So to Google, your small site might actually look like a massive online megacity.
So even if you think your site is small, you might want to run a crawl as Googlebot and see just what they see when they're looking at your site.
Yeah, definitely. It can be pretty eye-opening.
Okay, so the article breaks this down into kind of three main areas that can impact your crawl budget: quality, volume, and accessibility. So let's start with quality. What makes Google decide that a page just isn't worth crawling?
Well, think of it this way. Googlebot is hungry for unique, valuable content. So if it finds a page with a lot of duplicate content, or that's spammy, or maybe it's even been hacked, it's going to say next and move on to something else.
So quality content really is still king.
Absolutely. It's not just about keywords anymore. Google's algorithms can recognize truly valuable content, and those are the pages that they're going to prioritize.
Okay, so let's move on to volume. This is where things can get really tricky, especially with those faceted navigation things that we talked about earlier. The article uses this example of a pet store. Can you kind of break that down for us?
Sure. So let's say you're on the cat toys page of this pet store, and you start filtering your search. Contains cat lip, has feathers, made of organic materials. Every one of those selections creates a unique URL.
So that could be like hundreds of URLs.
Yeah, it really adds up. And then there's this thing they call the infinite URL problem, which you often see with events calendars that let you click into the future.
So like the year 2050.
Yeah, even though those pages might technically exist, they're not actually providing any value right now, and it just wastes Googlebot's time.
Okay, so we've got quality and volume. Let's talk about accessibility. What makes it harder for Googlebot to actually get to your pages?
Well, this is where the technical stuff comes in. Think server errors, too many redirects, slow loading times. All of those things can create roadblocks for Googlebot.
So it's kind of like inviting someone over to your house for a party, but making them jump through a bunch of hoops just to get in the front door.
Exactly. You want to make it as easy as possible for Googlebot to access your site. And if it encounters too many obstacles, it might reduce how often it visits or even skip over certain pages altogether.
Makes sense. So we've talked about what crawl budget is and why it matters, especially for certain sites. But how do we know if we actually have a problem? Do we have to constantly be checking like our website vitals or something?
You don't have to panic. but there are a few ways to get a better understanding of how Googlebot is interacting with your site.
Okay. So the article mentions Google Search Console.
Yeah. There are two reports in there that are particularly useful, the crawl stats report and the page indexing report.
Okay.
Crawl stats will show you how often Googlebot is visiting. And if it's encountering any errors, it's just a good overall health check.
Okay.
And then page indexing tells you how many of your pages are actually getting indexed by Google.
Got it.
So pay close attention to the discovered currently not indexed category. If you see a lot of pages in there, it could be a sign that Googlebot is struggling to access them or make sense of them.
Okay, so that's Google Search Console. What about your log files? The article mentions that too.
Yeah, log files are really important. They give you a much more granular view of what's happening on your site because they record every single visit, including those from Googlebot.
So it's like security camera footage.
Yeah.
But for Googlebot.
Yeah, exactly. You can see which pages haven't been crawled lately, which ones are getting the most attention, and even potential bot traps. There are some great tools out there that can help you analyze those log files and identify any patterns or issues.
Okay, so let's say we've done our homework and we think we might have a crawl budget issue. What do we do about it?
Well, the first thing is you need to make sure it's actually a crawling problem and not an indexing problem, because if you're blocking pages that are already indexed, it's not going to make them disappear from Google.
Right, you got to fix the root of the problem, not just try to cover it up.
Exactly. So once you've confirmed it's a crawling issue, there are a few things you can do. One is to use your robots.txt file. That's basically a set of instructions for web crawlers like Googlebot. You can use the disallow command to tell them which pages or sections of your site you don't want them to crawl.
So it's like putting up do not enter signs.
Yeah, pretty much.
I've heard this is a good way to deal with those faceted navigation explosions we talked about.
Exactly. You can tell Googlebot to ignore all those variations and just focus on the main category pages.
Okay. But the article did mention something about bad bots that might not follow these rules.
Yeah, unfortunately, not all bots are created equal. Some of them might ignore your robots.txt instructions and try to scrape your content or cause other problems.
So it's like telling a toddler not to touch something.
Pretty much. But even though we can't control those bad bots, using robots.txt effectively is still really important for managing the good guys, like Googlebot.
Okay, so what else can we do?
Another important tactic is to focus on improving the speed and quality of your pages.
Right, because those slow-loading pages
Yeah.
are pages with thin content. Those are the ones that Googlebot's going to skip over.
Exactly. If your pages are loading quickly
Yep.
and they're packed with valuable, unique content, Googlebot is much more likely to crawl them frequently and potentially give them a higher ranking.
Makes sense. This makes me think about mobile-first indexing. Like, Google really cares about the mobile experience these days. So if your website is slow and clunky on mobile, that's going to hurt you with Googlebot.
Absolutely. In today's mobile-first world, having a fast, responsive website is more critical than ever. Google is prioritizing the mobile experience. So if your site isn't optimized for mobile, you're definitely going to see a negative impact on your crawl budget.
Okay, so we've talked about blocking pages completely. What if there are pages that we don't necessarily want to block, but maybe we just want to limit how much Googlebot crawls them?
Good question. That's where the nofollow attribute comes in handy.
Okay, so remind me what that is again.
You can add this attribute to links to signal to search engines that they shouldn't follow those links.
Right. Like with those event calendars we were talking about. You don't want Googlebot crawling through years of empty calendar dates.
Exactly. You can use nofollow to keep them on track.
So Googlebot won't waste its time, but humans can still click through those links if they want to.
Exactly. It's all about efficiency.
Okay, back to robots.txt for a second.
Sure.
The article mentioned something about using it to lock entire folders.
Yeah. That can be really helpful if there are areas of your site that are generating a ton of URLs.
Like with faceted navigation?
Exactly. You can block those unnecessary filter combinations with robots.txt and free up a lot of crawl budget.
Got it. So how do we know which pages or folders to block?
That's where analyzing your crawl data comes in. Remember those log files we talked about? You can use those to identify patterns in Googlebot's behavior.
Okay.
You can see which pages are getting crawled frequently, which ones are being ignored, and even how much time Googlebot is spending on each page.
So we're basically spying on Googlebot.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It helps you make informed decisions about which areas of your site to prioritize and which ones to potentially block or de-emphasize.
So we want Googlebot to focus on the pages that really matter, The pages that are going to bring in visitors and customers.
Exactly. It's like a marketing campaign.
Huh.
But instead of targeting potential customers, we're targeting Googlebot.
I like that. So this has been really helpful. I feel like I have a much better understanding of crawl budget now.
Me too. It's always good to brush up on these technical SEO concepts.
So what's the key takeaway here for our listeners? Should everyone be freaking out about crawl budget?
Well, unless you're running a massive, constantly updating website, or you're seeing a ton of your pages stuck in that discovered but not indexed limbo, you probably don't need to make crawl budget your top priority.
Okay, so for most of us, it's more about understanding the basics.
Yeah.
And keeping an eye on things.
Exactly. But even if you're not dealing with major crawl budget issues, knowing how Googlebot crawls your site can still be really valuable.
So it's like having a behind-the-scenes look at how Google sees your website.
Exactly. You can see what it sees, what it likes, what it skips over.
It's like peeking into Googlebot's brain.
Yeah, kind of.
And by monitoring this,
Yeah.
you can catch potential problems early on.
Exactly, before they snowball into major SEO headaches.
So it's kind of like preventative medicine for your website.
Yeah, exactly.
So this whole conversation has been about Googlebot. But what about other search engines? Bing and DuckDuckGo and Yahoo, all those guys. Do they have crawl budgets too?
That's a great question. I mean, they're all basically trying to do the same thing, right? Crawl a web efficiently, find the best content, and give their users the best results.
Right.
So even though the term crawl budget might be specific to Google, the underlying idea is probably something that all search engines deal with.
Yeah, so it's not just about pleasing Google. It's about understanding how search engines work in general and making sure that your website is accessible to all of them.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive into crawl budget has been really interesting. I feel like I've learned a lot.
Me too.
So for our listeners out there, even if you don't become a crawl budget expert,
Yeah.
just having this basic understanding can really help you with your overall SEO strategy.
Absolutely.
So that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.